What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr. says that Jermall Charlo is not a likable guy and hopes to take him down soon. Okay? And this is what he had to say verbatim. He says that he's not a likable guy. Some people say I'm arrogant or cocky, but I'm down to earth, a decent guy. This guy's head is in the clouds. He thinks that he's more than he is. I would take great pleasure in taking him down a peg or two. Wow. Anyone can look big and strong and fast against weak opponents. That's all he's had his career. Until he fights someone like me, he will find out that this isn't the game that he thought it was. Wow. Okay, we know Charlo is 29, and of course, he beat Dennis Hogan last year, which was a pretty good fight. You know, it was a pretty good scrap. But most of his opponents, Brandon Adams, Matt Karabov, which was a good fight. A lot of people thought he lost that fight, which he was an older fighter at age of 36. Hugo Centeno Jr., Jorge Highland, those guys are really not the top names in the division. Maybe they were the only people that Jermall had quick access to due to Al Heyman, because Al Heyman, picks his fights, even though he's his own boss. So he says a lot of those guys say that same shit, and they're really not. That was all Al Heyman. And the opponents that Al Heyman picked for Jermall have been weak opponents. They haven't been anyone to write home about, right? So I agree with Chris Eubank Jr., okay? Being a likable guy, well, depends on who you ask, because I think the Charlo, Errol Spence, Deontay Wilder, those guys kind of have some of the similar same kind of backing, okay? Certain people relate and cling to certain guys, you know what I mean? So, they fit a certain demographic. So being a likable guy, being that quote-unquote bad boy and stuff like that, I think that's what Jermall Charlo, is going out for or whatnot. But Chris Eubank Jr. is right. He hasn't fought the opposition, and then, his best really win is against what it was at 154. So honestly, he hasn't done shit at 160 to be going to 168. I've already counterpunched this. But if Chris Eubank Jr. wants it, he got to go for it. But, there is a but. Chris Eubank Jr. himself, every time he's really stepped up, he's been beaten. Except for the last time, and he was going up, against a fighter that, has had his share of fights in the ring himself, and his ups and downs, okay? But it's one of those fights where I feel Chris Eubank needs to show us where he's at, and vice versa, okay? Because Chris Eubank Jr. has been in there with guys, and you looking at he had a close fight with Billy Joe Saunders, and a lot of that was kind of a, not here or there kind of fight, but, he came on later in that fight, but he lost, okay? So if you look at his career, he's only got 2 losses, but honestly, that George Groves fight was, he didn't even, he looked like the smaller dude in there and couldn't even penetrate, and inflict pain like he normally did at middleweight. Okay, so, and Billy Joe Saunders, it was a split decision or whatnot, but still, I think he needs that type of fight himself. He's beat some pretty solid guys, though. Nick Blackwell put him in a coma, Gary Sullivan, Spike O'Sullivan, and James DeGale, he retired him, so he's coming off a pretty good win, and and he beat Matt Karabov lately. So they have some similar opponents, especially with Matt Karabov. And Matt Karabov gave Jermall Charlo all he can handle, and Jermall showed me that he was tough, but he showed me that he had also holes in his defense. So I think it's one of those things where I don't know if Al Heyman will allow that fight to happen, honestly, because, you know, they have plans for undefeated fighters. Chris Eubank Jr. is not an undefeated fighter. In fact, he's a threat. Okay. Now, if Al thought he could walk through Chris Eubank, maybe you might see that fight happening. But it's a gambling thing, you know. Chris Eubank would be a guy that would give Jermall problems because he would press Jermall, and Jermall's not used to that type of person that's fighting. But he can counterpunch also. So I would like to see that fight. Same management, or should I say same promotional or a same advisor, Al Heyman. I think that fight could happen. I don't see why that fight shouldn't happen, because there's no politics stopping it from happening, right? But I think the competition that Chris Eubank Jr. has been in, you know, in the times he did step up, he was beaten, you know, except with James DeGale. So maybe he's learned something. He's been training with Roy Jones Jr., so that's been giving him confidence, I feel. And but he has a better resume than Jermall by far, you know, because Jermall hasn't done shit since 154. You know what I mean? And I don't know why he's leaving 160 when he has unfinished business at 160 to move to 168, talking about fighting David Benavidez, which, you know, I think there's enough hard hitters up there, enough guys that keeps him busy for potential fights on his own, you know, from Jermall going up there. But anyway, it sounds interesting at the end of the day. I do wish the fight, you know, could happen. I don't have a pick 'em in that fight. I just think those guys, it would be a good fight. You know, winner takes all. Winner moves and progresses to the next level. You know, is Jermall Charlo really all that hyped up? Or hasn't he just got in a situation like he was like Triple G, you know, and ain't fought no one because he didn't have the opportunity. But we already counterpunched a lot of that, so I don't believe that to be true. But anyway, that fight does look good. You guys tell me what you think. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been counterpunched. Peace.